Hey guys, Matt here, hope you're all doing really well. Welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to start learning notes on the guitar and eventually help you to unlock more of the fretboard, which will help you understand more about chords, scales, and music harmony in general. So let's get straight into it. So for this video, I'm going to show you the notes on the 6th string and the 5th string. So that's E and A. Now, some people will recommend that you learn the notes across the first 4 frets on every single string. The downside to that is that you've got 5 different strings, and learning all of the notes inside these 4 different frets across 5 different strings is quite a lot to learn in one go, and it's sometimes hard to visualize that on the fretboard because of all the different strings. Don't forget the 2 outside strings are both E, so whatever fret we play on these 2 strings, it will be the same note. But the other 5 strings are obviously completely different. So by learning it across one string, there's a few benefits to this. Number one, when we learn scales, we usually start with shape number 1, which will always start with the root note on string number 6, or the tonic, which basically means the starting note of the scale. So if you know your string 6, in theory, you'll be able to find any shape number 1 on string number 6, whether it be the pentatonic scale, the minor scale, the major scale, and so on and so forth. If you learn string number 6, you're going to be able to find those different keys very quickly. Number 2, chords. One of the most common chords is the E-shape bar chord, which starts with the root note on string number 6. So again, if you know your string number 6, you're going to find all these different chords very quickly just from knowing this one string. And number 3, once you've learnt these 2 strings, you can actually work out where other notes are across the other strings using the method of octaves. And I'll be diving into octaves on the 3rd lesson of this little video series. So let's get into string number 6. So before we get into the notes, you just need to know the musical alphabet. If you're not familiar with that, I'll put it on the screen now. The notes are A sharp, B flat, B, C, C sharp, D flat, D, D sharp, E flat, E, F, F sharp, G flat, G, G sharp, A flat, and finally back to A. So you'll notice there we've got a bunch of notes with a sharp or a flat, and we're not going to focus on those today. We're just going to focus on the natural notes, which are A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. So if we kickstart with the E string, the open string is E. And when we go to fret number 1, this will take us straight to F because there's nothing between E and F. So we have E, and then F on fret number 1. Now I'm going to skip the 2nd fret. We're going to jump straight to fret number 3, and this is G on the 3rd fret. If you know your open chords, you will know that when you play a G, you start from this note here, which is G on the 6th string of the 3rd fret. So you can instantly relate there to an open chord if you're already familiar with that chord shape. So far we have E, F, and G. We're going to skip the next fret, fret number 4. Again, that's a note with a sharp and a flat. So we're going to skip that one, and we're going to jump straight to fret number 5, and this will take us to A. When we're talking about notes on the fretboard across one string, we only need to learn up to fret number 12, because beyond fret 12, everything repeats. You'll also notice that fret 12 has 2 markers. So this is the point where everything starts again. So if we use that as a focus point and the open string, you'll notice that A is almost in the middle of the fretboard when we're talking about string number 6. So it's a good little reference point. So let's go over those notes again. We've got E, F on fret number 1, we have G on fret number 3, and we have A on fret number 5. Next up, we're going to skip the 6th fret and we're going to jump straight to fret 7, and this will take us to B. After B, we're going to go straight to the 8th fret, and that will take us to C because there's nothing between B and C. So we find C there on the 8th fret. So we'll go over those notes so far on the 6th string. E, fret 1 for F, fret 3 for G, fret 5 for A, fret 7 for B, fret number 8 for C. Okay, and we've got 2 more notes to go when we're just sticking to the natural notes. So we're going to skip the next fret, fret number 9, and we're going to jump straight to fret number 10, and that will take us to D. And And last but not least, we're going to skip the 11th fret and we're going to jump straight to fret number 12. And this is where we started with the open E, and now we're back to E on the 12th fret. So if you play your open E string and then play the 12th fret, what you're hearing there is an octave. An octave is a distance of 12 semitones, or when you learn a major scale, it's the 8th note that you come across in the major scale. There aren't 8 notes in the major scale, there are only 7, so when you get to the 8th note is basically where it starts again. But in terms of just learning the notes on this 6th string, you can think of it as 12 semitones. So let's go through those notes again, starting with the open E. So E, 1st fret we have F, 3rd fret we have G, 5th fret we have A, 7th fret we have B, then we only go up 1 fret to get to C, move along 2 frets to fret 10 for D, and then back up to fret 12 for E. Now you'll notice that some of these natural notes happen to fall on the fretboard markers. If you're not sure what the fretboard markers are, they're these little dots that you get on the top of the fretboard, or on top of the neck, sorry, and on the front of the fretboard you'll have an inlay. Sometimes you might have, depending on what guitar you've got, you might have a dot, or you might have a square, or in this case I've got the doves. And so the benefit of using the fretboard markers here, it just gives us sort of a reference point for some of these natural notes. So for example, if I go to the roughly the middle of the fretboard, when we're talking about open position to fret number 12, go to the 5th fret, that's A. Surrounding that on the other fretboard markers, if we go back to fret number 3, you got your G. If you go back up above A to fret number 7 on the marker, you got your B. So you can instantly use those 3 fretboard markers on the 6th string to help you memorize and learn those 3 notes. If you forget those notes, don't forget about the open G chord. If you know your open G, you instantly know that that's G without even realizing it, which is really cool. Another way to remember the 5th fret for A is that will sound exactly the same as your open string 5, which is also A. This is where 5th fret tuning comes from. We'll go over that in another video. Okay, so before we move on to the 5th string, another thing to point out when it comes to learning the musical alphabet and then translating that onto the strings is that there are 2 groups of notes, or 2 sets of notes, that don't have anything in between them. So E and F is one of them. So that's what we call a semitone, or a distance of a semitone, which is equal to 1 fret. And the other 2 sets of notes are B and C. Go back up to fret 7 for B, and then you got C on the 8th fret. So if you memorize and learn that there's nothing between E and F and nothing between B and C, whenever you're on any other note, you'll know that you're going to have to jump by 2 frets to get to the next natural note. For example, so you learn E and F, you now know that you've got to move by 2 frets to get to that G. You've also got to move by 2 frets to get from G to A. And again, 2 frets to get from A to B. But now we've got that other set of notes, that other group of notes where there's nothing in between. So you've got B and C. And then from there, keep going up 2 frets. So C, 2 frets to D, and then again 2 frets to get back to E. Once you're there, it just all repeats again. So if you want to experiment by moving along the fretboard, again, you can use the markers as a reference. So we have E on the 12th. So that's E and F. But again, go up 2 frets. There's your marker. There's G. Go up another 2 frets. You get to A. And so on and so forth. But don't worry too much about the higher frets. The main focus really is to learn the open string up to the 12th fret, just the natural notes. So once you've got to grips with those natural notes on one string, in the next lesson we will start to fill in those gaps. But to sort of make this a nice easy process, learn the natural notes first, and then it becomes easier to fill in the gaps with those sharps and flats, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail in the next video. So moving on to string number 5, nice easy one this one, because we are actually starting at the beginning of the alphabet, A. So remember what I was saying about the groups of notes that don't have anything in between them, which were E and F when we were talking about the 6th string, and B and C. Now because we're starting on A, that means if we go along 2 frets, that will take us to B. So there's our A and B. Now before we move on from here, I'll show you a cool little thing, sort of a connection, if you like, between these 2 strings. Once you've got those first 2 frets out of the way on both of these 2 strings, you'll then find that all the natural notes across both the 6th and the 5th string actually fall on exactly the same fret. Now the notes are obviously different because they're different strings, but we can use those same frets as a reference. So I'll show you how that works. So we have A, B on the 2nd fret. That's obviously different to what we did on the 6th string where we went E to F, fret open string to fret 1. Okay, so now we move up to fret 3 for C. So we have A, B, C. Now from this point forward, we're going to find all the natural notes on exactly the same frets. Okay, so we move along 2 frets. That will take us from C to D. So fret 5 is D. Move along another 2 frets. That's going to take us to E. So far we have A, B, C. Follow the fretboard markers, D, fretboard marker for E. Remember there's now nothing between E and F, so we jump from E straight to F. So we're on fret number 8 for F. Move up 2 frets to get to G. So that's fret 10. And then 2 frets, and that will take you back to the 12th fret for A. So you've reached the octave there on the 5th string. So I'll just go through that once more. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Now if I go back to the 6th string, apart from the first couple of frets, from fret 3 onwards, all the natural notes also appear on exactly the same frets. So the 3rd, the 5th, the 7th, the 8th, the 10th, and then obviously the 12th for the octave. So here's E, semitone to get to F, because there's nothing between E and F. Now go to the 3rd fret for G, and we're going to follow those exact same frets. So there's G, there's A, there's B, C, D, and E. All right, so we have these 3 frets here. So we have 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th. Okay, across both of those strings, the natural notes fall on these 3 frets. And then beyond that, we have the 8th, the 10th, and then obviously we're back to the 12th. So these 3 frets here. Again, across both strings, the natural notes fall in exactly the same position. Again, they are different, but we can use that as a useful reference to help learn both of these 2 strings. So let's go through both of those 2 strings once more. So E, 1st fret for F, 3rd fret for G, 5th fret for A, 7th fret for B, 8th fret for C, 10th fret for D, and then the 12th fret for E. Moving on to the A string, we've got open A, B on the 2nd fret, nothing between B and C, so we go straight to the 3rd fret for C, 5th fret for D, 7th fret for E, 8th fret for F, 10th fret for G, and then we're back at the 12th fret for A. So a cool little exercise to help you on your journey with learning those notes on the fretboard is to pick 1 or 2 different notes to start with and find those 2 notes on both strings. So let's start with A and B. We're going to pick A 4 in a row. And then we're going to pick B 4 in a row. What this does, it just gives you time to think about the note that you're playing, memorize where it is, and then we can do that on the other string. Remember where A was on string 6? It was here on fret number 5. Do the same thing, A to B. So you're starting to learn where both of those groups of notes are across both sets of strings. Let's add in another note. Let's go A, B, C. Now do the same thing on string 6. A, B, C. And you can keep doing that, add in whichever note you would like to do. You could come up with your own progressions on a string and then see if you can work out where that same progression is on the other string. So there's a few different ways you can go about it. Best thing to do first of all though is just work your way through each string, memorize and start to familiarize yourself with where the notes are, and then you can move on to the next string. And then beyond that, it'll be a case of learning the in-between notes, which we're going to check out in the next video. Well, there we have it guys. I hope you enjoyed this video on learning notes on the fretboard part 1. In the next video, part 2, I'm going to dive into a bit more detail with the sharps and the flats. If you feel like you got something out of this video, go ahead and hit the thumbs up, and don't forget to click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you'll receive updates on all of my future videos. I've been Matt Mallory, and I'll see you in the next video.